Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
The Canadiens' recipe is when they score 3 goals, they win, right? That's the recipe.
Actually, I think if they score 2 goals, they win. If you go back and all these playoff games.
Maybe, but I mean 3 is like the magic number.
Right.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so it is Friday afternoon. Some might call it Friday evening, June 25th, the day after Saint Jean-Baptiste Day. Also, more importantly, the day after the Montreal Canadiens eliminated the Vegas Golden Knights in round 3 of the NHL playoffs, meaning that the Montreal Canadiens have advanced to the Stanley Cup final. And we have a lot to talk about, but I don't want this to be a crazy long episode. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first thing I'm going to say is, during the game, I sent you a message and I asked if they were going to present the Clarence Campbell or Wales trophy to the teams, to the winning team, because technically there are no conferences this year. And we got our answer to our question because the Canadiens were awarded the Clarence Campbell trophy, which is quite funny because they don't play in that conference.
It's amazing because everything going on, historic night, overtime goal. And what are you thinking about? What trophy are they going to get? And are they going to touch the trophy? That was on your mind.
Well, that's the only reason I asked the question, because I was wondering if they were going to touch it, which they didn't.
It'll be a footnote in history for sure. The Canadiens being awarded basically the Western Conference trophy. But what's going to be even more of a footnote is that we're going to have 2 Eastern Conference teams playing for the Stanley Cup also.
Actually, there might be 2 teams from the same division playing for the Stanley Cup.
That's right. We'll see what happens tonight. I mean, so, obviously the game between the Islanders and Tampa hasn't been played yet, so we don't know who our opponent is. I talked to a coworker today who, as you know, most of my colleagues are in the United States. So he's a big Islanders fan. So he's obviously like going big for the Islanders. And I said, someone else asked me, like, who are you cheering for? I said, I want a 5 overtime game where everybody on both teams gets injured. That's like my goal.
Yeah, but the finals doesn't start until Monday. So even if it goes to 5 overtimes, they'll have some time to rest and relax before. And furthermore, whoever wins tonight is starting at home. Like, Montreal has to travel regardless.
So, I mean, you told me you don't have notes. I've got a list of notes. So I don't know if you want me to sort of drive the episode or if you had some stuff on your mind that you wanted to talk about first, about the Vegas the Habs Vegas series, the Habs in general, anything.
Well, I have stuff in my head and it's going to come to me as we talk, but there's one thing I wanted to mention. I was looking at some regular season stats during the series. So obviously this is before last night's game. And I was comparing some regular season stats between Vegas and Montreal. And I was surprised to learn, and maybe you will as well. You know how we always talk about how bad the Montreal Canadiens power play is? It's a little bit better now, but it really was bad.
No, but the Vegas power play was really bad this year.
I was stunned because I think they were like one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league when it came to goals scored. So you would think that they would have a decent power play, but they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, their best player is Pacioretty, well, one of their best, and anybody that's watched him play, which all Canadiens fans have, know he's useless on the power play because he's not good in tight spaces. He's not a particularly good playmaker. He's the equivalent of a better Josh Anderson, like skill-wise, not physical, but that he'd like his whole style is skate, north-south skating and shooting. That's Pacioretty's game, and that doesn't translate on the power play. It just doesn't, and I don't know. You'd figure with Pietrangelo and Mark Stone, they'd have something going, but I guess not. Well, look, the Canadiens, I mean, the Vegas power play was useless in this series. Is it because the Canadiens' penalty kill is so good, or is it because the Vegas power play sucked? I don't know. But, the Canadiens have killed off, 30-plus power plays right now? More than 30 in a row?
That stat is insane. That has happened. What is it, 10 or 11 games in a row now? Without
they showed the stat. It was like exactly 30, the last 30 power plays, 0 goals against, and then to boot, they scored 3 shorthanded goals during those 30 power plays.
I know, that's impressive. It's very impressive.
That's amazing, right?
As I said to you like a few days ago, I still don't know how the Canadiens have done what they've done. I still don't know how, because it's not like the team is drastically different from the team that finished the regular season and limped into the playoffs.
Yeah, but people for the same point that people criticize all year long in that, and we've said it too, we've sort of agreed with it. You were much more outspoken, and that you can't have all your money on the goalie, all your money invested in the goalie, but maybe they're proving that wrong, because the goalie is their best player, and that's what they need. And now the other thing that you say it's not completely different than the regular season is there's this little guy, number 22, who it makes a huge difference, right? Because it's really hard to score goals in the NHL. It's even harder to score goals in the playoffs. Like when you look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, they scored all these goals this year, right? Like they scored tons of goals, whatever, But when you really break them down, is they didn't have such great goaltending. Their defense is sort of average. They don't have any good bottom six. But what do they do have? They've got a guy named Austin Matthews that can score every single time he shoots the puck, right?
Yeah, that's something good to have.
Yeah, and I feel like for the first time in maybe forever, the Canadiens have a guy like that. They have this guy who maybe he's not going to do anything, but one time during the game, he's going to do something, and that goal is going to make or break. And you saw the goal he scored yesterday. That was madness. Like, what a piece of skill, Better
than his goal was when he flipped the puck to himself just as he was crossing the blue line. That was even prettier than the goal itself.
Everything that we've seen about Cole Caulfield is the kid is a star, Like, I don't know if I don't know how he's going to put up huge point numbers or whatever he's going to do, but the kid's going to score goals. He is going to score goals. And all those points that the Canadiens dropped in the regular season because they sucked at 3-on-3 and they sucked in the shootout, he's going to win those games for them now. That's going to be a whole bunch of points in the standings that they're not going to that they didn't have before. I just love that guy. I love him and Suzuki together. Like, what the first note I have here, Josh? I love this team. I'm in love with the team. Like, everybody, the whole unit, the whole thing. I watched all the post-game shows. I listened to talk radio the entire day today. The entire day. And I couldn't get enough of it. I was eating it up, Like, it's just, they're such a joy to watch. And you saw, like, last night, like, what was the first thing? Bergevin, the general manager, in his red suit on the bench, hugging every player. This guy loves the players. He loves them. He's passionate about his team. Someone said on the radio today, you can criticize Bergevin's moves, you can dissect his trades, and you can do whatever you want. And actually, most of the trades are favorable, but this guy cares about his team. He cares about the players, and he cares about the organization. You cannot take that away from him. He's very passionate about his job. So that's a great start in any job you're going to do, to be honest.
So let me just give you some rebuttal to some of the things you just said. So first of all,
Sure.
When he wears the red suit, the Canadiens are undefeated.
Yeah.
So that's
he's
one
only
thing.
worn them in the elimination games, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe he wore them. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, he's worn it 3 times. They're 3-0.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about Cole Caulfield, I was so happy when he scored on Robin Lehner because Robin Lehner said he knew exactly what Cole Caulfield's going to do every time. So how come you didn't stop him?
But you know what? In the press conference, him and Danault were together. I don't know. You didn't. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I saw. It
after
was
the
great.
game.
It was great.
And they asked Caulfield about it, and he was such a professional. The kid's 20 years old, Josh. And he's such a professional. He's like, oh, yeah, that stuff with Leonard, that was just good fun. He's like, I don't. He goes, actually, the best thing he said was when I shoot to the back of the net. Like, he goes, I'm not picking spots. I'm shooting to score. Like, I think it's just natural reaction. He's not planning, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go there. It's all instinct, because he scored 1 million goals in his life, So he was such a professional when they asked about Leonard. He didn't try to throw Leonard under the bus. He just sort of took the high road, and it was really, and made light of the whole thing. It was really good.
That's fine. He handled it professionally, but I am not a fan of Robin Lehner because of comments that he made in April about He felt like the players were in prison because of all the restrictions the NHL was placing on them. And he went on and on. I'm not going to get into all his comments. You can Google it and read it yourself. But for him to make those comments was extremely annoying to me because he needs a reality check.
Do you think that DeBoer overcoached by like putting him in instead of Fleury, and then not putting him in last game actually? Like,
I mean, the first time they changed goalies, they were already digging themselves their own grave because it doesn't work. You have to have one goalie. If you have, it's like a quarterback. If you have a quarterback 1 and quarterback 1A, then you don't have a quarterback. You know what I'm saying? So same thing with a goalie.
You're 100% right. And actually, Chris Nyland on the radio today, like I told you, I listened to the radio the whole day. He said if he was a player in that dressing room, when Fleury's been your guy all year, and I know Leonard's been good for them in the past, not so much, didn't play that much this year, but he said the coach probably lost a lot of guys in the room with that decision, and players were probably disappointed that Fleury wasn't playing and wondering what's going on, So it just causes a little bit of
doubt,
that extra distraction and doubt, like doubt, right? That you're doubting your coach now, right? So
100%. Although I don't think it would have made a difference whichever goalie they used because Vegas's biggest issue was the same issue that Montreal had most of the regular season, was that Vegas couldn't score. So, or maybe Montreal's, defense was just so much better. I don't know.
Caulfield had 4 goals and the Vegas forwards had 4 goals.
So there you go.
All the offense that Vegas had in this series was coming from the defense. Pietrangelo, McNabb, whoever, Alec Martinez was one who scored yesterday. But those top forwards, all those guys that you heard about coming in that were going to supposedly dominate us, right? Pacioretty, Stone, Carlson,
Tuck,
all these guys that were supposed to grind us and kill us with their speed and with their strength. All those guys had 0 goals. Everybody had 0 goals. Pacioretty had 1. Everybody else had 0. Right? So, I mean, that's all you need to know.
I think Vegas has made it to the semifinals every year since their inception, but I think their team was actually better in their first year than it is now.
For me, when I look at their team and I see the top 2 forwards are Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty, to me, that's not good enough. That's not
what I'm saying.
Enough.
They were better 4 years ago. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, look, they have Pietrangelo now, who they didn't have, who's definitely very dynamic. But,
he was their best player in the series, without a doubt.
Well, he is their best player, I think. So yeah. So I just want to go back to that Danault, Cole Caulfield press conference. I don't know if you saw it. He came out when he gave him the pizza.
Yeah, I saw that.
It was cute because the French press were asking Danault a lot of questions, and you could see they were smiling at each other.
Yes, I know what you're going to say.
So you could sort of tell that they had a conversation before, basically Caulfield saying, oh, they're going to ask you all these questions in French, and I'm not even going to know what you're saying, which was pretty clear. But there was one part, which was my favorite part of anything I heard post-game, including everything today, which was they asked Caulfield, how do you feel about, all these veterans on the team and guys like Price and Weber who never won a cup before? And Caulfield, being a pro at 20, kind of said, something along the lines of, we're playing for those veterans. I'm here to contribute any way I can, but it's really all about the veterans in the room. We're playing for them. And Danault just turned to him and said, you sure are a big part of it, though. And he patted him on the back, and then they hugged, right? Danault recognizes how important this little kid is to their team, It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's really unbelievable. It was such a great little moment, so what do you have to say about that overtime goal? How many people had Arturi Lehkonen as the scorer?
So nobody had that, first of all, but even before the overtime even started, some point during the third period, I said to my brother, I was watching with my brother and my dad, and I said to my brother, this line, the Gallagher, Danault, Lehkonen line, they can't buy a goal. They just can't. But that's not what they're there for. Danault has his, he's good on faceoffs and he's always checking the other team's best center. So I don't mind that he doesn't score, but this line can't score.
No, they didn't even look close to scoring actually practically this whole series. They were not a threat at all, other than Gallagher doing his normal stuff in front of the net where he's stirring the pot and getting. Gallagher physically gets destroyed every game. This guy takes a beating. It's unbelievable. I don't know how he does it. But you're right. They weren't a threat at all. And then, the amazing thing is that face-off right before that play happened, right? So it was a face-off in the defensive zone. The Vegas Knights got a good shot. Price made the save with his shoulder, and they came back the other way and scored. There was that stupid play where the linesman blew the icing call.
Yeah, that hit his pad. It hit his goalie pad. Why did they not call icing?
I don't know if he thought, obviously he must have thought it hit the post because it clearly hit something, right? It didn't go behind the net, so it hit something. So he must have thought it hit the side of the net or the post, but like it was clear as day that it hit his pad. Like that call could have turned the series because Vegas scored half their goals on plays on face-off plays, right?
And Luke Richardson didn't seem to even protest at all to the referee.
But there's nothing he can do. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything they can do. No, they can complain, but it's not. They can't challenge it. Like they can't.
Right. Okay. So speaking of strange calls or non-calls, something happened 2 games ago, I think, or 3 games ago. I don't remember. It's all a blur now. And maybe I don't know the rules, or maybe the rules have changed. But so I think it was Kotkaniemi that got a high stick. Like he was high sticked in the face, and he was trying to show that he was bleeding, so it would be 4 minutes. And they reviewed it, and then instead they gave no penalty at all because they said that he was hit on the follow through of the shot. So I thought that if you hit someone with your stick, follow through or not, you have to control your stick, and it's a penalty. End of story. But here they're saying that because it was a follow through, it wasn't a penalty. Have I been drunk all these years?
No, I think at one point in our life that was a penalty. Like you're saying, it was a penalty. The follow throughs, high sticks, they used to call them.
Yeah.
But I guess at one point it changed, and I don't know when it changed, and I wasn't aware of that but it was really unfortunate because if there was no blood drawn and they didn't have to check, then they wouldn't have overturned it.
But it would have only been a 2-minute instead of 4.
It would have only been a 2-minute. Yeah.
Right.
But the replay stuff is weird. What are you going to do? It's pretty weird. Yeah. That was a crazy call.
So if I could just switch gears slightly, I know you have a bunch of notes you want to get to.
No, my notes are like almost finished.
So, in a normal season, it's challenging to get playoff tickets to a Montreal Canadiens game when they're in the playoffs in a normal season.
Yeah.
This season, obviously, it's even more difficult. And yet, we know somebody, you and I, Steve from the West Island, who has season tickets, and he has managed to go to every single Montreal playoff game where tickets were available for fans. He's been to every single one.
Jeff Molson was on the radio today, and he was saying they're going to petition the government to try to get as many fans as they can into the building.
I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you saw, like they were showing the crowd outside the Bell Center last night. Yeah. It was insane.
Oh, it's crazy. That's nuts. Completely nuts. Completely nuts. And then on Facebook this morning, I saw my sister was there.
Since when does your sister care about that stuff?
I don't know if they stayed for the game, but they were there at one point, like in that area. It looked more daytime in the pictures, to be honest. See. So I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, right? So who do you think the Canadiens, who do you prefer to face as a Habs fan, Islanders or Tampa?
I really have no preference whatsoever because, first of all, Tampa could be the best team in the league. They won the Stanley Cup last year, and they got, assuming Kucherov is playing, they have all their, all their weapons. And the Islanders, they're like almost a carbon copy of Montreal. So like if they play each other, Montreal can't dominate that type of game because the Islanders are going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be weird. It's going to be tough either way, obviously. We're all excited because Caulfield has 4 goals and Suzuki has 5 in the playoffs or whatever it is. And then if you look at the stats and you see Tampa Bay stats, Braden Point has 14 goals in the playoffs.
Well, hasn't he scored in 10 consecutive games or something?
It's nuts. The guy's on a crazy streak. Everyone's worried about Kucherov. What about this guy? And then they have Stamkos, oh, brother. Yeah. Tampa's tough. I'd like to play them. Like, if you want to be the best, you got to beat the best.
By the way, everyone's saying it feels like 1993, but this year is much different than 1993. I'll tell you why. Because Montreal was not supposed to beat Toronto in the first round. They weren't supposed to beat Winnipeg in the second round. Then they weren't supposed to beat Vegas in the third round. If you go back to 1993, Montreal got lucky. They played Buffalo in the second round instead of Boston. And in the third round, they played the Islanders instead of Mario Lemieux and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So they actually had I don't want to say easy because it's never easy, but an easier path to the Stanley Cup Finals in 1993 than they did this year.
And to me, it's more like 86 because you have the really young rookies. The Canadiens in 86 had Stéphane Richer, who was, I think, 19 years old. They had Claude Lemieux, who was like 20. They had Peter Svoboda, who just came from Czechoslovakia back then. He was also a teenager, or he was 19 or 20. They had all these really young players. And then they also had Bob Gainey and Larry Robinson, Craig Ludwig, and these guys that had been around forever, so that's much more of a similarity to this team. But look, it's nice to make comparisons, but this team is this team. This is the team that we have now, there's 4 Stanley Cup winners on this team. People forget, there's 4 Stanley Cup winners on the Canadiens now. Foley, Edmondson, Perry, Stahl. That's a lot of leadership. And then you add in Weber and Price, who are incredible leaders. That's a nice group, veterans.
So you mentioned something about all the moves that Marc Bergevin has made, and most of them have worked out actually really well.
Yeah.
But if you go back to the day of the trade deadline this past year, the Canadiens added Merrill and Gustafsson, and I think that's all they added really. And because they added those 2 guys, they had to put Mete on waivers, and they lost him for nothing. And if you ask me, I'd rather have Mete ahead of either of those guys any day of the week. So actually, they made their team worse on the day of the trade deadline.
It is possible, yes. And, with all due respect, Romanov should just be playing. Like, we've talked about this before, right?
I still don't understand that. I still don't get it. Someone's going to have to explain to me.
If you want to use Gustafsson on the power play, great. But use Romanov instead of Merrill, right?
I don't get it.
But they're not going to change the lineup because they're winning, right? Honestly, that's all it is. That's all it is. And, Jake Evans is back. He's playing. He's practicing. He's not even wearing the non-contact. He's ready to play, apparently. But, he can't get back in the lineup now. Lehkonen took his spot. You think Lehkonen's coming out of the lineup now? He just scored that goal yesterday. Come on.
So basically, I figured it out. I mean, it wasn't hard to figure out. The difference between the Canadiens lineup on opening day this past season and today is, 3 forwards. So they added Caulfield, they added Eric Stahl, and they added Corey Perry, who wasn't playing. He was a healthy scratch at the beginning of the season, if you recall. And
the first 5 games.
They've subtracted, if you will, Thomas Tatar and Jake Evans and Jonathan Drouin. So that's basically the difference right there.
Yeah. But they're healthy, and they're playing up to their capability now, right?
By the way, one more thing. That last night's game, up until the overtime, was actually quite a boring game, I found.
I agree, but that's the way the Canadiens play too, right? I mean...
the overtime was exciting because it was only a minute and 39 seconds, but the rest of the game wasn't that exciting. The Caulfield goal was obviously exciting.
So, we're going to try to record maybe after the first game of the final. We'll see, right?
Sure. I mean, the schedule came out. All the games start at 8 p.m. Eastern time, regardless of who the Canadiens are playing. You want to record right after the game or the next day, it's fine with me.
We'll see. There's a quirk in the schedule. I don't know if you noticed. There's no games on the weekend.
I noticed that, yes. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
It's because it's the 4th of July weekend. I think that's why.
Who knows?
It's just weird. No game Saturday or Sunday. So
if it goes to Game 7, Game 7 is on a Sunday.
Let's play it by ear, and we'll see when we're going to do our next episode. But, until then, it's just... Let's hope the Habs can keep it going. Keep this crazy season going, right?
Let's hope. I mean, it's fun to watch.
It absolutely is. All right. Talk to you next time.
Okay.